This episode is brought to you by the future. Oatly had experts look into the future, which is totally possible, by the way, and then report back about what things will taste like when we get there. Learn about bold ideas, the dawn of decaf, and the rise of fiber in the Future of Taste report on Oatly.com. Welcome to the coffee show, Greg Corns. Greg Corns is I'm going to call him coffee or hospitality venue advisory coach. Would that be correct? As well as an owner-operator.
Will call myself an owner-operator that seems to be transitioning to hospitality coaching from a distance.
And pardon me, Greg, you're from Auckland in New Zealand, yes?
Yes, correct.
Which part of Auckland are you in?
I live in Sandringham. My cafe's based around the city fringe, so Eden Terrace, Parnell, Takapuna, and Wynyard Quarter.
I absolutely love New Zealand. It's like, I say to people, it's like Australia on steroids, scenery wise only. So like it's more beautiful than Australia. I will say that.
We'll take it.
So, Greg's been posting some videos about kind of helping people and advising people on how to effectively run a hospitality business, and it's becoming an increasingly more difficult thing to do in today's climate for myriad different reasons. But Greg, could you run us through sort of, again, some of the reasons why you do this and what you kind of hope to get out of it and help people with?
Yeah, it's twofold, I guess. Trying to educate like a wider community, customers or what have you. That's I think with hospitality, there's been quite a general misconception for quite some time, because I think a lot of people see it as quite an accessible business. And we both know from, for the longest time, margins were good, and you could afford to enter in the business quite green, make a load of mistakes and course correct. But when you're running with 3 to 7% margins these days, you just don't have that ability to make those mistakes as big or as often. So yeah, the part of the content was really just trying to bring attention to the trials and tribulations of hospitality and what it takes to run a business in the current era. Because I think when people experience cafes or restaurants on the daily, a part of me is always torn, because I'm like, why should a customer kind of care about how the place operates? Like they're just there to buy a coffee or have a meal. They just want the end product. But I think that with cafes and things like that, there's such a funny business that they're almost seen as like a community service, and so and I think that's where the misconceptions come in about what it takes to operate. And most people cook at home, they host people or what have you, so they think that kind of business is easy to do. So that would be the crux of it. That would be why I've kind of gone down this track of trying to open people's eyes to what it takes.
Yeah, and some of the things that you just said there made me think about, like, hospitality has been so, I guess, there's so many different things that are happening at the same time that are affecting it. Like, for example, I actually think in Australia we've had this mass compliance issue where a lot of hospitality up until COVID effectively, they actually paid people under the table. So they paid them cash, which means they didn't get paid all their superannuation entitlements, which is like your retirement savings or 401k for our Americans, KiwiSaver, I think you guys call it. So that was one thing. So they were effectively paying 30% below the minimum wage for the most part, and that was across the board. Like everyone was doing it, and then that's now changed because 2 reasons: because now most people pay with their cards, and then secondly, there was a really famous scandal here involving a chef called George Columbaris, whose restaurant group that he was a part of was underpaying his chefs. So like his chefs would get paid for 40 hours and work 60, which again, across the board, I think he kind of took the crucifixion for the whole industry there, and did the wrong thing as well. So those are things that, so pretty much everyone's getting paid properly now. And I don't think a lot of people could actually afford to be in business before if they were doing things above board. And then you mentioned it just before we started recording. There's things like COVID's changed the way people work. So a lot more people work from home now, and that's really changed things. I think social media has been massive as well. TikTok trends have really altered the way the industry's kind of operated. And then, the advent of signature drinks. I think that it's been such a quick and rapid change. Like in the last 3 or 4 years, people really love these cream foams and matchas and things like that. And it's the landscape from, from end to end, what's in the store and, done on the accounting book has just changed so much. And I can't think of too many industries in the world that have had the tectonic changes that, hospitality and coffee have.
Yes, I think quite dramatic since COVID, really. We've had our business for 12 years now. We opened in 2014, and I really refer to it as a game of two halves. Can I just point out, I in the early 2000s, I worked and lived in Melbourne for a period, so I'm familiar with that style of pay. Yeah, so, but I will say that moving from New Zealand then and living there and working for my hourly rate plus a tip rate was actually was a lot, compared to what we could get back home. So, it still is even above board now. But yeah, so it is definitely a game of two halves, and COVID has changed the landscape a lot in terms of, I know New Zealand's story is similar to a degree with the respect of the amount of money that was used in COVID to help support businesses and help, the wider economy. But of course, that was borrowing from the future. That is what is effectively driving up a load of costs today. And then you've just got the practical changes of people's day to day and how they interact with the city, how they use the city, and how it flows. And also a load of trend changes. Like a younger set of people, we're all quite aware how drinking cultures change quite a bit. So you've got people that are a lot more health focused, and I think that's also driven a lot of what we see on Instagram and social media. I see like the social media as a double-edged sword, right? We both know how beneficial it can be to your business and you personally, but at the same time, I would almost suggest that is part of the driver of people getting into hospitality, not quite aware of the full set of circumstances of what's required to operate, because they see a load of beautiful fit outs and beautiful coffees and beautifully presented food and great times and good times, and it all looks amazing. And it can be, but it's just that to make that happen, the people on the other side are working a lot to make that happen,
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with all of that. And, I do think the public is becoming more aware and perhaps sensitive to the plight of, venue operators nowadays, because particularly in Melbourne, and I would say New Zealand as well. New Zealand's got a fantastic coffee scene and hospitality scene. But what if it ever went, like, Melbourne's got not much else going for it. And I think you're starting to see, the cracks of that emerge with, the level of criminality we're experiencing here. The crime's gone way up because the economy's in the toilet. And you said the words borrowing from the future. Well, Victoria's was the most locked down place on planet Earth during COVID. And, that all had to be paid for. Like if the government demanded that or forced people to stay home, well, they had to bankroll that and make sure people were still paid and could be fed and businesses could still operate. And it was a total disaster. But I think if the hospitality scene were to go here, the city of Melbourne has next to no identity. And, it's gone from having coffee and, sports and all those things to now machetes and, all these other crazy things that it's known for. So it's quite sad. So, hospitality has a lot of cultural importance, but social importance as well. Like it's it gives a lot of meaning to the things we do, like work and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, it brings me to the point. I'm quite concerned about the industry in general and what it looks like in 5 years, and your point there about what it does to the culture, and I think this is especially relevant for our Antipodean cafe culture because it is a cafe culture that is taking the world by the storm. I say that Starbucks had its day, flavored coffees and all that had its moment, and now you could argue that Antipodean coffee with all the expats moving around the world and the influences of places like Melbourne and New Zealand's hospitality scene are influencing other countries, and that movement is going around. But I worry when I look at the economics of it, and we look at the wage increases that are in Australia and the penalty rates that are in the weekend. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but my appraisal from that, sitting over on this side of the Tasman, is that it makes it really unviable to operate in weekends, as far as I can see. I feel like there's kind of like second and third order effects there, where the decision to raise the wages is great. Everybody agrees people need to be paid a good living, but it's almost a decision made in isolation. It's something that large companies can foot the bill of, but when you look at hospitality and the reality of operating a store in the weekend when 3 or 4, 5, 6 staff are paid X amount of money, it leads me to think, well, what happens there? Do people decide to just not operate on a Saturday or Sunday? And then what does that do to the culture that we have all grown up with? These are the things that I'm kind of like pondering at the moment, because I just see these things and I see where we're at the moment, and I can't see how the models that we've been used to for the last 20, 30 years remain the same. I can't see it happening. The costs are having too much of an effect.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring it up, because I kind of feel like something is going to break. And here in Australia, we've got a long history of collective bargaining, right? The Australian Labor Party, which is our version of the Democrats, and same as Labor in probably, you've got Labor Party in New Zealand.
We have a Labor and National, and we have a kind of union set up, but not really for hospitality.
Yeah. So, and then in America, it's like the Democrat equivalent, basically. But in Australia, what's unique about it is it was developed during the gold rush era, where like basically miners and a bunch of other workers from different sectors banded together and started this party to negotiate better wages and things like that. So it's collective bargaining is a huge part of Australia's, I guess, cultural fabric. But the wages here are set by an independent tribunal every year. So there's I think it just assesses inflation basically, and then increases wages according to that. And the government is always there to, claim some win. Wages. We are responsible for this, which is not really the case. But it just the level of inflation now, and this is a broader discussion about global macroeconomics. It's all kind of inverted in some ways, because right now we've got all the inflation going really high. And the government's just constantly, our Reserve Bank, so our Federal Reserve equivalent, is hiking up interest rates, but it's kind of reductive, because the real income, so that is the purchasing power of your dollar, is just getting lower and lower because of the inflation. Then they increased your cost with interest rates on things like home loans and all those sorts of things. So it's all just I don't see, it doesn't seem part of a regular economic cycle, because people say to me, oh, there was recessions in the 90s and stuff like that, but this just seems irregular and not normal.
Yeah, and I would say that, if you circle it back to the crime discussion, when you look at the higher wage and what that does, it obviously moves like a whole pay scale within, just say, one cafe, for example, and then that entry level job, for New Zealand, the minimum wage is around $24, for example. So, and you're looking at like chefs and things, baristas, anywhere from say 26 to 30 odd dollars. But all of a sudden, if you've got a kitchen hand starting at 24 and you've got, a barista on 27 or a chef on 27, they're looking at that going, well, hold on, I've been in this industry for 5, 10 years, and this person is starting, on near a wage that I am. So effectively what it happens is, as an employer, you're starting to overlook people that you would have ordinarily in the past brought on for training and things like that, and you're looking for people that are already qualified with some amount of industry experience or something like that, and so, I guess the phrase that you would coin is that the entry level is becoming broken, and when I say when it circles back to crime, that's because, you're going to have a load of like disenfranchised young people that can't enter the job market. Those entry level jobs are disappearing because as employers, your expectations or aim is to get someone more employed that is worth that hourly rate for the level of productivity. So it's a big discussion on micro and macroeconomics.
What are some of the things that you're working on actively to try and address these things? So like you can't, we all have to, like, it's all well and good for us to discuss these problems, but what are some of the solutions?
Well, I think the solution, we're as a business, we're not in the position to sustain it right now. But I guess what you would hope is that any businesses that are flourishing can set up some kind of investment or grant to new people to start within businesses, and it's this leads to me like what you start calling like stakeholder capitalism, which is, I guess, a philosophy, right, where everybody benefits. So you have staff that work in the business that have some ownership in it. They all have skin in the game. Your business is able to offer grants to new people to offset the ordinary cost of what it would cost to train them and have them start. You could say that we are doing things that are anti that at the moment, not by want. We have automated our service, for example. We've had a light discussion as such about you're doing pre-batching, we've automated service. In essence, we're both looking to do the same thing, which is make more efficient systems to offset the cost pressures. So I guess when you're automating service, though, you are taking away those entry level jobs, but we, financially, it's not viable for us to have
When you
them.
say automated service, what do you mean?
So we have like coming out of COVID, we saw that there would be a hard to find good staff. Basically, we had borders were only just opening up, things like that. A lot of Kiwis were leaving. And so we knew that finding good hospitality staff would be hard. So we custom built a kiosk and QR and online ordering all to one point of sale system. And that effectively, we do days of trade that we used to have 6 staff in a cafe, and now we do it with 2. So it's the availability of time that it opens up when a customer is handling the ordering and payment side. Of course, there's a bit of nuance in the delivery of service. People can be a bit standoffish when they're presented with a screen in front of them when they walk in. But that's a bit of an art, I guess, to how you execute on it, making just the typical things that you'd want in a cafe where someone walks in and they're acknowledged and said hi, and you can kind of already start taking that order from them and then just lightly point to the ordering and payment system and they process it through. Obviously, regulars get it down pat. First timers are a little bit standoffish, but if you guide them through in the right way, they appreciate why it's there. There's a lot to it. As you would see with your side of automation, it's you're trying to educate a load of people as to why you're doing it. and open their eyes to why you're doing it. But you're also trying to like not undermine the product of what they've come to you in the first place for. But yeah, like I said, for us, it's what has kept us in business. We did open a store last year, our Wynyard Quarter store. So you could argue that this is what has given us the ability to do that, to keep growing in arguably a very difficult time. And like I said, I guess the best explanation is we there are days trade that we used to do with 6 staff that we now do with 2. So that's the difference in that side. Personally, after seeing your stuff, I wasn't too aware of pre-batching and things like that. But now that I see it, I actually kind of think the future of hospitality is somewhere between the two, is probably a combination of pre-batching, the automation of the coffee side, while still trying to keep a little bit of theatre going, and then automated service where you still have human interaction, and the customers don't feel too put off by this other style of service.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring it up with the pre-batch because like it's been something I've wanted to do for quite a while, and that store was supposed to open a year before it did. There was so many delays with the build, but I won't get into it. But since we opened, it's been covered in scaffolding pretty much for most of its life. It just got removed, pardon me, a few weeks ago. And there's always, and we've been really affected by the crime wave. So before I forgot to press record, we were talking about I was on the news this morning talking about how we've been really affected by crime at that end of the city, and it's been a deterrent for customers to come in. But thankfully, it's been really picking up of late. And the interesting finding that I'm having, Greg, is that more and more people are becoming regulars from offices, and they're embracing things like ordering on their phone in advance. Like I got an order the other day. It's like a $100 order that it's for 10 drinks or whatever. Probably 11 or 12. But they're getting pretty used to the fact that we can order off our app at our desk and then come down and it's ready within 5 minutes, or I can order it when I'm getting off the train and it's ready. So the value proposition is actually finally starting to flow through with people, and the store's really starting to pick up. So I'm really happy with it. And to the point where now so obviously I've been making the espresso manually. I'm looking at getting an Eversys this week. So I have to get a plumber, an electrician to come and fit some of our other cafe out. So it's been a grind. It's been really hard, and we've been affected by all this construction and some other things. But finally, Greg, it's starting to make some money and perform, and I'm really, really happy with it.
Yeah, good. It's good to hear.
But it's as much as these macroeconomic things are affecting us. One of the few positives we can take out of it is that we're finding these crafty solutions to do things and innovate and survive.
Yes, yeah, and I think it does take innovation, but I think it does. It will to some degree change the experience of what people. We're just in a transition of what people remember what hospitality was for the last 20 years. And we are going through that change, and people, some customer bases in some areas are experiencing places that are doing something slightly different, and there will just be more of it over time, and it will become normal. We all kind of know that's like a typical thing. I guess for me, it's just like you can't see the future, but it's how does the math, and does it enable people to keep operating in weekends and keep providing this cafe culture, that we all kind of love. So, that's kind of the stuff that I think about. Yeah. Hence,
in a way, like we talk about all this, and I really do hope that the world becomes more stable, both economically and in a security way, because it's never looked more grim really than it has now. But should it stabilize, I do actually think there's a bright future ahead for a lot of crafty people. And I think it'll be a lot less than it is now. I think there's I think you'll see fewer and fewer, unfortunately, independently owned cafes in the future. But I think for the people that are like standout superstars of their game, like, you know, the A1 barista and the A1 kind of server, I actually think there's a pretty bright future ahead for them in a world where you've got this technological abundance and things like that. If we do have hover cars, if we do have AI doing everything, if we do have Optimus robots that do a lot of the manual tasks, and we do live in that Elon Musk post-scarcity world, you know, something like a barista that has sommelier-like knowledge of their product, I actually think is an incredibly valuable skill in the future, and probably high paid as well.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do, you know, I think that you know, you know, people ask what I think where hospitality will end up, and it's like, well, I'm not sure, but it will be there because, you know, with all the tech, people still enjoy human interaction, you know, and cafes and restaurants may be one of the few kind of places left where people can still go out of their day and experience that. So I think it's just how does it look, you know, for the people that are trying to provide it, you know, what shape or form. So, you know, I mean, we've seen, you know, the rise of delivery food and things like that, and so you know that there's like an element of hospitality these days, which it's hard to call it hospitality, but it could be, you know, a ghost kitchen in an extremely dense area that's just operating purely food delivery on scooters, you know,
Mm.
that doesn't really interact with people. You know, so there's these different facets of business that have come about, but you know, I guess for us, it's like we have cafes, we enjoy that human interaction, we enjoy the banter with the customers, you know, like that kind of stuff, and we like giving them a good experience and a good product, and we like seeing them enjoy it, you know. So yeah, but I think with all the technological change and with all the pressures, you know, hospitality will still be a thing because people enjoy that human interaction.
Yeah, in a way, I feel like the value of it is really only increasing with all these things that are going on in the world. But on the other side of that, I do, like I was saying, I think there'll be fewer and fewer independently owned coffee shops in the future. And you know, when I was in America, it was kind of shocking some of the things I was seeing over there, in the sense that, like, you know, for example, when I was in Houston, I don't know if you saw the video that I was posted about it, but it was around electricity prices. And
Yeah,
yeah, so, you know,
yeah.
to enlighten everyone, I have a 38 square meter cafe in Melbourne. And when
Mm,
I was visiting Houston, I visited a place called Roastronics, and they're operating, you know, three electric roasters, which are high users of electricity. And then they're air conditioning their factory 24/7 because they're storing a lot of high value green coffee in there. And I was like, isn't that just like heinously expensive? How can you
mm,
afford that? And he said, oh, electricity is really cheap here. And I said, how much? Um, and he said, oh, whatever amount per kilowatt hour. And I showed him my bill, which in Australia,
mm,
for my cafe, 38 square meters, couple of coffee machines, a heater here and there, fridges, ice machine, yada, yada, yada. $6,500 for a quarter, Australian dollars. And he looked at it, he goes, I pay less than that. And I was just like, are you kidding? And he showed me his bill, and I verified it. And I was just like, what? Like, we cannot compete with that, you know. And if
no.
you extrapolate that to the broader economy, like manufacturing, for example, like Australia cannot have a manufacturing industry that can compete with America if they have that kind of setup. And you were saying your electricity prices went up about 30%, like same with New Zealand.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and that's yeah, the cost of inputs is crazy, and that's the part, you know, that yeah, I find it interesting. It's like you say, like good operators will adapt and find ways to make it work. And I guess you could argue that we have with our automated service, you know, we you know we've adapted. It has worked. It's the only costs that we can control really, you know, are our food costs and our wages, you know, and so um, that's we're running out of room with our wages.
Yeah.
We've got as little people as we can operating our places.
Yeah, and then to add further to that, you said like I think I saw one of your videos today actually talking about it. It's like McDonald's can spread their costs across multiple venues, and these bigger firms as well. They have greater purchasing power in that they purchase in higher volumes, which gives them a bigger discount on things. So the little guys they could be making the same standard of coffee, like the exact same standard of coffee, but with the same ingredients, but their costs are just so much higher because they don't get access to things like that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we have 4 stores, and it's not really you know, when we were 3 stores pre-COVID, we had a little bit of purchasing power in terms of like a little bit of scale. But it's pretty much dissipated since COVID. So even 4 stores doesn't even give you any kind of purchasing power really. But then we have this weird setup with our supermarkets, like a duopoly. So like, people often ask me, since putting out the content and saying that, doing AI invoice tracking and comparing, what suppliers were, and doing supermarket sweeps online and comparing those prices to what we're purchasing from our wholesalers. And people are like, oh, but aren't you getting it from wholesalers? Like an expectation that it's cheaper, but in New Zealand, it's not really the only advantage to a wholesaler is really that you get it delivered.
Is that
you know?
right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's like, there's, you could, you will find goods that you are selling or ingredients for your products, you will find it cheaper in supermarkets. Not all the time, but it'll change week to week. They're always discounting different SKUs in the supermarket. So you can sure as hell bet that your products will be cheaper at some point, if not the same.
Could you explain how you're using AI in that sense? That really interests me.
Yeah, so we have just been setting up systems to help my admin side become more efficient, to give me more time on the floor and other places I can focus my energy really. So the one thing that I did with that was, yeah, the price tracking, setting up through Claude basically to sweep the supermarket websites of the local ones to me, so I can logistically work out whether I want to order more from that as opposed to our wholesaler and get a better price. And the other aspect that has worked really well is collating all the invoices that come in, and having it cross-reference all of them to make sure that all the pricing is the same, capture any missed payments, any missed typos from the supplier side, and has found some discrepancies over the time. So I've had a few, I guess, small wins that have encouraged me to use it more, and yeah, look at the other systems of how we operate our cafes and see what we can automate and things like that.
Well, this is a really interesting little nugget of wisdom for people that are listening, Greg, because that's I need to take a leaf out of your book. I'm heinously bad with the admin side of things. I've thankfully got people that can help me do it, and really allows me to not be deep in the weeds with so much of the admin and reporting and all that sort of thing. So if someone here is wanting to kind of improve their systems in that regard, and you've just outlined you have used AI and kind of created your own program using Claude. How did you set that up, and how could someone realistically do
that? Just Googling basically, and keeping an eye on socials. I get snippets from everywhere, and basically just search, discover by work. I'm a very practical learner. I learn by doing. So it was just playing around, basically saying, can I collate all my invoices? They all go to my Outlook 365. What's the best way of doing this? Talk to me like I'm a layman and spell it out to me, and step by step follow the process. And then, like I said, you get to points where you see it working. And I had like some real tangible outcomes of, I had $500 with one supplier that was mischarging me. It was our milk supply, operated by franchisees, but under one brand, and obviously being 4 stores of the same brand, our arrangement was that all that pricing should be the same across the board. But they had a couple of their SKUs were out of line with what the other franchisees were doing. And I just, with all of I guess the growth from 3 to 4 stores, I've found the change in workload. There's obviously more work, but I handled 3 stores quite well. I'm finding 4 like a bit of an adjustment. And obviously with the inflation and the little war that's going on, that's pushing up petrol prices and freight costs, they were obviously starting to move. There are a lot of balls moving at once, and I just wanted to be able to keep an eye, more visibility on what was going on.
So you're doing seminars, and you've posted about it on your social media, and so you're kind of having discussions directly with cafe owners and hospitality venue owners. What are some of the things that, like, I guess, what are the services you offer and advise people on when you're doing that kind of stuff?
So I've run 3 different workshops, and I'll probably keep doing them on a semi-regular basis. But one of them, the first one, was initially on the invoice tracking and cross-referencing that. And I think that's because a lot of operators, when they set out, will negotiate their prices at the start of what they're doing, and then they'll start getting distracted by all the other work that comes your way, the marketing, what have you, family life if you've got one, just normal life outside of your business, whatever you can afford to have outside of working 7 days or so. So the first one was invoice tracking, getting them to cross-reference invoices with each other and start to build like a data set and create a history of capturing all these invoices. So then the AI has more ability to go back in time effectively. Once you've built up a good catalog of invoices, you can literally go, what was my milk price on the 11th of May 2026, and start comparing just for your own knowledge. And then a second workshop that was basically building from that and starting to cross-reference data from the other platforms that you use. So whether that be like your accounting platform, your payroll, your banking feeds, or what have you, is cross-referencing that information to basically, I guess what I've made is what I call like a founder operating system. So I have a dashboard on my Chrome link that opens up, and it just gives me like a good visual of the business in terms of like costs, payments, cash flow, all in one place. So I'm not having to open up different tabs here and there. So there's a lot of things that I would have like opened up different, payroll or what have you, and then sat there with my calculator and a pen and paper and manually worked out whatever issue I was working through. And it was just looking at the AI and go, what am I doing manually that should be able to be done by this piece of technology, and then working out the method to make that happen. And so the workshops have been really about getting people to think in terms of that type of architecture, like systems architecture, and building those systems to present them the information that they need about their business. And your business to my business, there'll be different nuances, and there'll be different things that we look at, that we track, that we find applicable to us and how we work. And so the underlying architecture will be quite similar, but the end results will probably be slightly different from business to business. And then the third workshop, which I'm doing tomorrow night, is actually just a foundation one, and that's for people that are wanting to get into the industry or like on the cusp of opening their own cafe or maybe in the early stages. And that's just talking about everything from shop setups, the pros and cons of a empty shell to like a second generation site, fish hooks to look out for in lease agreements, little I guess advice around potentially negotiating for like landlord contributions and things like that. About diligence and market research and understanding like an area that you're looking at. I guess the mental side of it and being prepared to walk away from a site or an agreement, taking a refreshed approach, like a lot of people that, operators have a really standoff view against landlords and developers and things like that, where, I look at it, while there's lots of bad ones, there are a few good ones and you have to find them out. You have to do your research. And, you have to look at it that they are a business partner. It's just that your only ability to negotiate and provision for yourself is before you sign effectively. But, like our landlords were like really good with us during COVID, which I think is a sign of their nature. They're very forward thinking. They understand that hospitality underpins a lot of their wider kind of sites, and they wanted that to remain out the other side of COVID. But regardless of whether COVID was on the horizon, I'd already had those talks with them to decipher that information, that they were future thinking and forward thinking, and they viewed hospitality like that. So if you have a landlord that doesn't view hospitality as underpinning the area or like a service to the community or like or complements their offering of other retail sites or what have you, then you're probably not it's probably a relationship that's not going to go too well. So so that workshop is one that I think has probably come more off the back of the type of feedback that I was getting from Instagram and all these reels and this hospitality information that I was putting out there. I started to field a lot of people that were at different stages, but I guess you're trying to give them a reality check so that they really know what they're getting into, and trying to give them like a little bit of information and skill set that will help them, that will save them thousands of dollars hopefully down the track, or give their idea the best chance of longevity.
If someone's opening a venue soon, what do you think the hallmarks are of a successful business if you're a fresh opener? And if I can give a snippet myself, I think cafes have felt compelled to do too much in the past and currently in the present. So they're offering too many items on their menu, and which come with various costs in developing those items, but also maintaining them, and then it kind of affects the delivery of and presentation of the other ones. So I actually feel like specialists thrive these days, as opposed to people. The jack of all trades is a master of none, and I feel like the specialists, the people that offer fewer things but do them well, are the ones that are really excelling at the moment.
I agree with that. It's just understanding your market, like decide what your product is and understand like the market and what you're offering to. Like we went down the track of being more like a QSR, like a quick service restaurant, I guess you'd call us. So I would prefer to call us more of a QSR than a cafe, but by virtue of serving espresso-based coffee drinks in that Antipodean style, we are very reminiscent of a cafe. But we have a workflow and a layout that's more akin to a QSR, and that was done intentionally because we were trying to service we were trying to underpin our business with corporate settings. Obviously corporates, as generally have been pressed for time, and so everything about our product was still trying to deliver like good quality within a reasonable time frame, and that's something that works in the areas that we're in. But I would argue it's not necessarily something that would work well in the suburbs, where people want to be more relaxed and sit outside after a dog walk and things like that. So it's really understanding your product and then the market which you're trying to go for. And like you say, that you're not trying to be everything to everyone, because it does come with complications, and they're all, and I guess these are the things that, with the content of like trying to educate people about hospitality and trying to think about it like a proper business is what I'm trying to do, because having a wide menu of anything and those flow on effects in terms of staff costs to provide it, the more hands that you need to make the goods, the more ingredients, the more variations, like it's second and third order effects, and those are usually costs, and they will what will affect you down the track. I guess my key piece of advice would be how you said, if anyone was setting up in this time right now, it is to set up about mitigating risk and mitigating costs. I would encourage people to look at small format as opposed to big, and to think about a workflow that could potentially be done with one person, because you can, if you are busy enough and you can scale up your staff to meet that demand, that's great. But what happens if demand softens? What happens if costs increase, inflation increases, and have an impact on your trade? What things can you control to keep your costs relative to that turnover? So that's the type of advice that I would
Well,
give.
I'd love to open a venue like this one day, and just so that it exists, but I kind of want to have a venue that, for example, a restaurant where the
Mm,
chefs, they're not just chefs, it's at bar seating, but they take the order. They explain the
mm,
cuisine, and they have like a few wines that they'll offer as well, but that's it. The chefs are the ones that take the
mm,
order. And
mm,
there was someone that was opening like a bakery or something that was asking me, some advice about coffee and stuff like that. And the advice I gave was, don't sell it, don't serve it, because if you're doing your baked goods and people are primarily coming for that, the coffee side of things might actually cost you money, in the sense that you may or may not sell that much. If it's not the main thing you're
mm,
focused on, you might not put that much love into it. You've got to employ someone that needs to make coffee and serve people. And if they're having to do both and they might not be doing either particularly well, um,
mm.
sometimes, yeah, like not having coffee on your menu might actually be the smart play, or having that restaurant where the chef does everything, but not necessarily in a cost cutting measure, but more in like a superb delivery measure, where this guy knows all the ingredients. He can have a conversation with you about his food and prepare it right in front of you. I really love that idea of doing less is more. Like, for example, at our venue, we don't do food. We don't even toast our pastries, because we just want to focus on the coffee and the drinks. That's kind of what we specialize in.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. When I look at the future, and it's interesting that you said that about restaurants, because that's one of the things that I think about in terms of like a small format restaurant and like a name chef doing like like a 30-seater max kind of thing, like 15 to 30 seats, and a higher per head cost but a more intimate setting. That's one thing I see as viable. It's same as a cafe that's operated by like a couple, right, that are doing both facets of whatever they're offering. um, my only thing with that, there's always trade-offs. Is there, at what point do you hire staff? At what point does the couple that are doing the cafe want to break from that?
Yeah, well, it becomes increasingly
Do
more
they want?
difficult to scale.
Yeah. So, but I just think, if you really sat down and gave it a lot of thought, and that's what you really wanted to do, I think the clever operator would work out a way to do it. But those are the kind of places or style of places that I see working in the future. You know.
What do you think is the future for you? I mean, you've got four venues, and it's not always an easy trot. Do you think you'll be in hospitality for life?
I think in some shape or form I will be. I really. like the industry. I get a lot out of it, and it's given a lot to me. Like, before we went on live, I was saying I've been in the industry since I was 18. I've seen a lot of changes. I really do enjoy it. So I've kind of, my thing is always like balance with business. So balance with family and business. So I've kind of had this philosophy of like just scaling enough, really. So my thing has always been, I didn't set out to scale grandly and have 100 places or anything like that. I always provisioned for growth, but it was more of an organic process where the opportunities came along. I really weighed up with how that would affect my family life and time with them. I had when I started, I had one young child and another one on the way. So that's always been a big thing on my mind, and not, and it's hard because I would say not being so involved with business that you don't get to spend a lot of time with them, but ultimately, whenever you're starting out, you do have to put in a lot of time. So, but I've had my wife has been a big part of that. Everything was kind of like a collective decision about how we would go about it. So, and where will I be in 5, 10 years? If there's more opportunities to do more goodness graciouses, then I might do, but it's always kind of tempered by that thing of how much of my personal life is going to be affected by that. Um, I yeah, I don't know. It's hard because we hospitality, especially in New Zealand, like there's this thing the other week that liquidations are up 51%. For hospitality here, there's a lot of closures happening at the moment, and I think that's very symbolic of the time that we're in. So it's really hard to say, where you'll be in 5 years, but at the same time, I kind of enjoy the challenge, like of trying to make it
Yeah.
work. So, like all of this workshopping and stuff has come about from like looking at ways to grow um, outside of the traditional sense, and I think that is the infrastructure that's at our fingertips. So I've kind of had um, this thought that a lot more people in the future will be what I guess you'd call portfolio workers, and I don't know why that would stop at uh, hospitality operators. So for me, I looked at with AI and all that stuff. Marketing people, design people, their jobs becoming affected, and I guess you look at all these big agencies that have basically declined over time, and all the big companies have brought all that design and marketing in house, and so I see people like that working like 4 or 5 different jobs, effectively being a small business themselves. And I just think when you have the infrastructure at your fingertips, like we do with social media, with AI and things like that, the ability to operate more globally uh, is ever present. So, you know, would someone have said that to me 10 years ago, you know, I wouldn't have even thought that was an option to work how I'm working, like in doing all this online stuff. So, um, it's really hard to say where I'll be in 5 to 10 years, but I'm enjoying doing this part because it's just upskilling.
It's interesting you say about social media there, because I think people like you and I are massive beneficiaries of social media and our use of it. But like, I do feel like it would be a better world without it.
Yeah, well, I have 2 young daughters, so I definitely can see parts of it that I don't enjoy. I think, yeah, it's a hard one, eh? It's a double-edged sword. As you know, it's a bit of a mental game. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and even though we use it in a great way for our businesses, I feel you always get some backlash, and it's like the one bad customer in a day. You serve like 200 people that love the place, and you have one person that like has a terrible time and lets you really know about it, and you remember them for the next 4 or 5
Yeah.
days.
Well, it's so interesting because I think it's been a really good experience for me this year. It all started when I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Scott Rao, because
Yeah, coffee guy.
yeah, well, he's a coffee roaster, but he's a lot of people just don't like him, and I think it's
Okay.
sometimes because of his blunt delivery of things, and the way he views roasting and things like that. But when I released a podcast with him and I made a few clips, like the backlash just was huge. And he's kind of used to it over the years, but like it was my first introduction to it. And then when I started doing the pre-batch thing, it was just at a whole new level. But I think by the time I'd sort of dealt with it the first time, it kind of prepared me for what was coming, which was far greater. And and I know it's not really because of my conduct or something. It's not like I've done something improper or anything like that. But it's been an interesting experience in learning how to not really care or block out the noise, because it's constantly coming, and I've got shops that people can go and see me at. So some days it's because I'm building this profile online, and it's pretty easy to come and actually contact me. It gets a bit hard to kind of manage it at times when you're trying to have a conversation with someone that's appreciating the content you're putting online and getting a bit of advice from you firsthand. But it's like, I'm trying to run a business too, so it's certainly, it's been far more good than it has been negative, I will say. But it's not without its challenges, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the way to look at it is, and I've learned this through my own kind of experiences with social media, but obviously, if it wasn't there, probably it'd be a good thing. But I think we know that it is going to be there for forever in some shape or form. And so I think, certainly with my daughters, we try and teach them the tools to cope with these types of things. And I guess for me, like I had a massive social media blow up. Pre-COVID, we had a food influencer come through who was quite big here in Auckland and New Zealand at the time. Well, he was medium. He was on the come up, and then our social media blow up helped his career. And I spoke out on that, and got a lot of like hate on social media, right? And it wasn't anything out there. And in fact, I see a lot of people these days do exactly what I did, and it's more socially acceptable. I guess back then, having a business owner speak out, culturally, it wasn't a thing, So, and now it's more accepted, where you put a line in the sand and you say, no, this is not acceptable, And so, I learned a lot from that. It's almost like a gift, because now when I've put out all this other content and I get like a snide comment or whatever, it's water off a duck's back. But it is that way because of the experience that I had, which I think is very much like yours. Once you go through it, you kind of see it for what it is, and you emotionally build up the tools to deal with it. But it's a big learning curve, and I think why a lot of people don't get into social media or put themselves out there is because they see this stuff and they see it happening to people that they know, so they don't want to do it, which I appreciate.
Yeah, well, it's certainly been a learning curve for me, and like it's a good experience to have gone through. Like you said, like it kind of hardens you to a lot of things, and I think matures you in some other ways, and it's crazy how some things can go so global as well. Like people from companies all over the world have come to my new pre-batching cafe to look at how it's done and potentially embrace it themselves. And I'm talking from
That's awesome.
small,
Yeah.
medium to large companies. Like for every nasty comment that I get online, there's like 3 or 4 business owners coming and studying what I'm doing, and it's like, like it's crazy, and it's reached all ends of the globe, and people have literally flown from other countries to come and kind of study it. It's absolutely insane.
I hope to be one of those people.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah,
I look forward to having you over, Greg. When were you living in Melbourne?
like 2001 to 4, in that period.
Wow, they
Yeah,
were the golden years.
yeah, Oh, they were golden years. Patricia Roasters was around, early days for them, but they were awesome. I had some friends at the time open a place called Batch. Saint Ali, I think, came on the board there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. I had a great time. I lived on the corner of Elizabeth and Lonsdale for a period.
Back when it was nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know what it's. Yeah. Well, it's the train station end, right? Is the problem end? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
The street. Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, I lived in Fitzroy. Great
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I love. Very fond of my Melbourne time. Yeah.
Yeah, look, and it's a fantastic city. This is one of the best cities. Pre-COVID, Melbourne is the best place I've ever been to on earth ever. It's
Mm.
still an amazing place, and I absolutely love this place. I'm planning to move to the US one day, but I'll always forever cherish my time in Melbourne. I was born in Sydney. I've lived in Sydney most of my life, really. So, but this is a very, very special place, and I hope you get to come over here and see soon.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Hey, I'm beginning a bit of a customary thing at the end of the podcast now. I don't know if you listen to this podcast. Do you listen to it on occasion?
Yeah, I listened to a couple of
Yes,
episodes. Yeah.
excellent. So, I just wonder if you have any questions for me, Greg.
Just in terms of uh, how did you come across the pre-batching? What sparked your interest in it?
Well, I studied economics, so
Yeah.
I've always been. I didn't complete my degree, but I've always been really interested in systems and learning how to do things better. I first had the thoughts about it with Matt Perger. So Matt Perger is a friend of mine. So someone many in the coffee industry would know well. Founder of Barista Hustle, runner-up in the World Barista Championship. The guy just, he changed the game in coffee in 2013. Anyway, so he's a close friend of mine, and we've been speaking about it for years. It's like, well, if espresso doesn't really die in the way that people think it does, and so we were talking about it. We've been talking about it for years. I couldn't remember. Can't remember. Probably even before COVID, and he delivered a bunch of speaking roles in 2016 or 17. We were talking about the super automatic espresso machines, and at the time he was becoming an ambassador for Eversys, which are obviously much more prominent now. And so it started. We were talking about it before COVID a little bit, and then I spoke about it. I was talking about it with a guy named Chris Mabry who owns Beta Coffee now, and he had been experimenting it and it's like, with it as well. And it's like, oh shit, and I think I'd heard of some places in Los Angeles that were doing it, and perhaps China as well. So I'm not the first to do it, but.
Mm.
But yeah, that's where it kind of all started, and then Chris showed me how he was doing it with dispensing systems, and I thought, well, that's really interesting, and he does it with the Uber milk now, and aerates it, and there's a new place called Altilia Enso. But what first got me to embrace it during service was that someone actually had called in sick at my shop, and I had no one to cover them, and I thought, well, I am going to die tomorrow with just two people. Our venue requires three people. And
Mm.
so I thought, well, I'm going to give this thing a try. I'll stay back after work, I'll make all the espresso, and I'll see how it goes. And I text Matt and I said, hey, I'm going to do this. If you're around tomorrow, come check it out. I'm either going to sink or swim. And he did come, and I said, look, if it just observe. And he said, if it gets out of hand, I'll help. But we crushed it, and I couldn't believe it. In the time that you could make, 3 double espressos, I can probably pump 30 out so the productivity is just unbelievable. And it's interesting that you asked me that, Greg, because we're literally in the week there. I'll probably get a super automatic espresso machine, which I've been very skeptical of, but if you calibrate them correctly, and if you have someone who knows how the machine works, and not only knows how the machine works, but can really work with you, I think a lot of techs get in their own way, but if you get the right tech that can kind of suit your needs rather than impose their own hubris, then you can get the most out of you can get a lot out of those machines. But to answer the question specifically, yeah, that's kind of where it all began.
That's cool. Yeah, so it's like pressure, a pressure point, time and service is what pushed you into it, eh?
Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
it's the way it's evolving now, and it's like we're not just doing a house blend. We offer 3 different blends on each day. So you've got one that tastes like our house blend, which we've always got an anaerobic coffee in there, so it's a bit extra. I think our house blend is an unbelievable starting quality. Then you've got one called strawberry cheesecake and one called mango lassi.
Are those co-fermented? Is that?
They are, and I'm planning to release a few more blends in the future that are like interesting flavors, but not co-ferments as well.
Okay.
So, yeah, and people are really fascinated by it because they see these screens, they see it dispensed instantly, and it's made with gusto by someone who cares. I think if you look at the reviews for our Flinders Street store, all the positive ones, we got a 4.6 rating at this point in time. All the positive ones are actually about the service. But it's marrying all these things together, the hyper speed, the good service, and the flavor, the product. I've had to calibrate a lot to be able to deliver that, and it's been countless hours of work, but it's been awesome to put together, and I'm really excited with where it's going.
Yeah. And then where does the future lie for you then with this? Are you looking to do more stores? Like, are you looking to grow it as a replicable brand, or?
So what I want to do is I'd like to renovate my main shop now. So we're doing 500-600 drinks a day there now, and I want to renovate that so that I have capacity to do 1,000 with like 3 or 4 staff, which is just a cheat code, really. So I'm looking to outlay it in my current store and just really lean into it, but also in that store offer some really high-end single origins that are handcrafted and all those sorts of things. And
Nice.
I think the next stepping stone from there is to open a venue in the US, and I think there's huge opportunity in cities like Chicago and New York and Austin. Like Chicago, I just absolutely loved. I could see myself living there, but the winters might kill me.
Cool. I'm happy, Kirk. Those are my questions.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. I forgot to mention our main podcast sponsor, Apex Labs. Have you used Apex Lab before?
I have not.
Bro,
No.
when you come stateside to Australia, when you come over the ditch, I'll introduce you to some things. So they're mineral concentrates that you use for improving the water quality, which obviously improves the quality of your brew. Water science is a very underrated thing in coffee extraction, I will say. So that's Apex Lab, apexlab.com.au if you want to purchase some. Use the code KIRK2026 for the checkout, and hey, get yourself some Apex Lab. But Greg Corns, thanks so much for coming on the coffee show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. I think this is a bundle of information for people that want to learn more and improve the operations of their venue. So where can they find you on socials and get in contact for some of your workshops?
The best place is my website, youfoundgreg.com. Everything's all linked to there. So.
Well, you found him, and follow Greg on Instagram. Hey, before we go, I wanted to ask you for one of your Instagram reel style sort of moments on this podcast. So come on, down the barrel. You got to give me something. So
off the cuff, I will just say it's nothing major, but it is. You've just alluded to it from your store, but service can make or break your product. That's what I'll leave you with.
Service can make or break your product.
Good service, engaging.
And it really is the future. But I'm going to end the recording now. So, thanks so much, Greg, for coming on the show. And we'll have this out in a couple of weeks. And gosh, how much value we're giving to listeners now. Like you get to listen to this podcast. You are welcome, guys. Tell 2 friends. Hooroo. Thank you. You can either listen to the third Oatly ad of the day about how you can go to oatly.com and find recipes for the amazing drinks, or read the Future of Taste report. It's from the future, or learn about the sustainability work, or you can press the 15-sec forward button on your Podplaying device. It's totally up to you.